Well, big changes are happening at the FBI and DOJ under President Trump's second term. The headline from the Wall Street Journal says that Trump tightens his grip on the FBI and Justice Department. FBI Director Kash Patel has taken a direct line to the Oval Office, and we mentioned earlier on the show that Caroline Leavitt said that AG Pam Bondi and the Justice Department will operate separately still from the White House. So here to break all of this down for us is Senior Editor-at-Large for Newsweek, Josh Hammer. Josh, it's great to have you back on the show. So what's going on right now with Trump and Patel and Bondi? What does all of this mean?
Well, I think what it means is that Donald Trump ran on a platform of draining the swamp, and he's currently in the process of draining the swamp. I mean, there's this old quote from H.L. Mencken, the early 20th century social critic and newspaper columnist, who famously said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it's a close paraphrase, he famously said that democracy is the theory that the people vote for what they want and they deserve to get it good and hard. Now, Mencken was actually criticizing democracy, but we'll hold that aside for now. The point is that you get what you want. I mean, that is kind of the whole point of having self-determination in a republic there. And Donald Trump campaigned very hard on draining the swamp. And it's not entirely clear to me, frankly, what people expected what he would do when he came into power. I mean, did y'all think that MAGA drain the swamp was just going to be a bunch of mean tweets or posts on Truth Social? Was it going to just be kind of like a snicker or a snarl or kind of a stare down of a political opponent? No, it's going to actually have some real tangible changes there. So we've seen that obviously with Elon Musk at Doge. And when it comes to the FBI, which is kind of the deep state of the deep state, the FBI has been ground zero of everything that conservatives criticize when we say the deep state there. I mean, this is the origins, obviously, of Crossfire Hurricane, the nickname given to the Russia collusion delusion going all the way back to 2015, which Kash Patel, by the way, was one of the first national security investigators actually trying to uncover the rot of Crossfire Hurricane, an issue that he's been well on top of there. So the corporate media typically reports on this as power consolidation or it's going to be a purge there. You're actually just trying to get rid of gross rank malfeasance, the kind of subversive action which should not be in a presidential administration, which again is oriented towards draining the swamp. I mean, constitutionally speaking, this is all entirely emphatically clear. There is one person only in America's constitutional structure who wields the executive power. That is the President of the United States. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 1. The executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States. It is not vested in the vice president. It is not vested in the attorney general, the FBI director, the dog catcher, the secretary, the coffee boy. No one. It's literally vested in one person, and that's the president of the United States. The left tries to fearmonger and say this is unitary executive theory, this term that kind of caught on during the Bush administration days. It's just basic textual common sense. So Donald Trump is the one who's calling the shots here, whether it comes to Elon Musk, whether it comes to Pam Bondi, Kash Patel. It's all downstream of him because he alone wields the executive power there. And to the extent that there are going to be firings in place pursuant to the executive power, good. That's the way it should be. It's not a so-called purge. That is just justice and our Constitution actually working as intended.
Okay, so it sounds like you see the headlines today about the FBI reporting directly to the president as something that's perfectly appropriate given the power of the president. President is in charge of everyone, and therefore it's fine if there's direct communication between the two, right? It sounds like you think that. If so, I mean, add something if you don't. Tell me if you disagree. But if so, let's move on to DOJ because we have to talk about, I won't say growing criticism, but I think there's some concern out there about Pam Bondi, and everyone should give all these people a break because it's been about 5 minutes since they've been in office, and there's a lot of things to do. So I'm skeptical of criticism of anyone because we haven't seen a lot. But certainly there's something to criticize in how the DOJ rolled out those Epstein Files, quote unquote. And there are people who are worried that Bondi is, to use the parlance of our times, too normie, right? She's too moderate or squishy, to use the old words, and won't go far enough to root out corruption. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but I feel like I actually was on this very show to talk about Pam Bondi back when Donald Trump actually announced that she was going to be his attorney general pick. And what I said then, I will just reiterate now, which is she was not my first choice. She was not, frankly, anywhere on my list. She's not who I would have personally recommended. she was kind of just yesterday's news. I mean, she was a two-term attorney general of the state of Florida, which is where I live. She has a generally good reputation here in Florida in our legal circles there. Back in the day, she was one of the leaders of the red state pushback against Obamacare, even on the same-sex marriage issue, a kind of quintessential so-called cultural issue back during the lead-up to Obergefell. But I think the point is, these were kind of yesterday's issues, right? So, in this new MAGA 2.0 second Trump administration there, I personally would have counseled kind of a more forward-looking pick, not someone trying to kind of, bring back the great memories of yesteryear there. But to your point as well, Matt, it is very early. I also am kind of holding the round in the chamber, so to speak. I'm not really unloading on anyone yet there. The Epstein Files thing clearly was botched. I mean, there's really just no way to kind of put lipstick on a pig on that one. I mean, someone clearly dropped the ball there. And frankly, I still don't know myself exactly what happened. I think a lot of people are still trying to figure out exactly what happened there. It could be as simple as the Trump campaign and administration slightly overpromised and then had no choice but to underdeliver there. Maybe there actually were just too many things that for various legal procedural reasons simply could not be redacted. I don't know. I genuinely just don't know exactly what is going on there. I'm hoping that we will learn more, especially including congressional investigations in the weeks and months ahead there. But not off to an amazing start there, but again, it's very, very early there. There is a very long way to go, and I'm generally at this stage, Matt, generally speaking, just giving grace, which is kind of unlike me, to be honest with you, but we're very early on.
We're going with it. Certainly, headlines out of today: the war in Ukraine and the Trump administration. I saw you on X earlier saying what a diplomatic achievement from the Trump administration. This is so different than what we saw over the last, 3 years, essentially, that the war has been going on, that when you look at what they've been able to do to come in and in just over 50 days now to make the progress that they've made, just kind of going back to your original point of Donald Trump is going to get things done and he's going to do it with the people that he wants around him. What do you make of the latest news then with these headlines today?
Well, I think we're seeing potentially a Nobel Prize worthy achievement in the making. And we're, that's putting the cart way ahead of the horse here. I mean, we have this kind of preliminary agreement from Vladimir Zelensky. First of all, I mean, the mere fact that Zelensky felt compelled to go back to the negotiating table with Donald Trump, with Waltz, Rubio, Witkoff, and the entire negotiating team there, it shows, I think, just how much he knows that he grievously erred. So I guess credit where credit is due. I mean, dude, you really dropped the ball extraordinarily hard. I mean, like the hardest of all hard in that White House meeting there a couple weeks ago. And I guess you finally learned from those mistakes there. So good for him. We'll see what happens now on the other end with Vladimir Putin. But this has been an extraordinarily bloody war. This war has been going on for over 3 years. Vladimir Putin marched into eastern Ukraine and Crimea in February of 2022, literally over 3 years ago now. The death toll in that conflict is hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people there. Between plummeting birth rates, a shattered economy, Ukrainians who have died in the front lines, who have fled overseas, who are not marrying, not having kids there. It's going to take this country at least a half century, maybe even more than that, to have any chance of recovering there. This has been one of my criticisms of Zelensky all along, by the way, is that he puts on this kind of tough guy approach. We will fight to recover every last square inch of territory there. And to me, I kind of say, from your own perspective, from a Ukrainian national interest perspective, at what cost? At what cost are you actually going to wage to recover every single square inch there? So look, Donald Trump campaigns hard on bringing peace to this part of the world there. And, no one really fully understands exactly how Donald Trump works when he is wheeling and dealing there. I mean, the Gaza plan, I mean, who the heck knows what's going on there, right? Yeah, I mean, he's kind of throwing a lot of darts, a lot of mud at the wall. He's throwing mud at the wall, seeing what sticks there. His methods are obviously unorthodox. That's very much a feature, not a bug, by the way. And it looks like it's working like a charm right now in Saudi Arabia in this Russia-Ukraine negotiation. But again, this is only the Zelensky part of the equation. The Putin part of the equation still has to come there. So we'll wait to see when that shoe drops.
Don't want to make light of serious issues, but the Gaza thing, it does sort of the range of options there, right? That Trump is promoting, it sort of cracks me up. But one is Trump Tower over Gaza. The other is the meme, hear me out, Gaza with no Gazans, right? And it's somewhere in between there, very, very, very interesting stuff. But we have to move forward because I really want to get your take on a very important issue that we're going to be talking a lot more about. And it's part and parcel with with really passing the CR. I mean, there's a big debate among Republicans about budgets and so forth, and CRs are the devil, and we know that they are. And in fact, you and I oppose these. We want to see Congress actually pass budgets. But this time, the argument is we got to keep things going a little bit so that we can do all the things we need to do, right? And part of this argument, implicitly at this point, and sometimes explicitly, is impoundment. The concept of impoundment, something that something that OMB under Russ Vought will, I think, is very interested in. Something that the administration is already preparing the American people for. And you had a post on X today about what's going on with this issue. So if you could explain that to our audience, what is impoundment and what is going on?
Okay, so this is a very old debate. The impoundment debate, Matt, as a scholar yourself, this goes back all the way to the origins of the American founding. Thomas Jefferson actually was the first president of the United States who ever impounded federal funds. I believe the year was 1801, if I'm not mistaken there. So impoundment refers to the presidential practice of taking funding that Congress has already statutorily authorized and then using your own Article 2 presidential discretion to choose whether to actually allocate that funding or not. And there was a grand kind of separation of powers constitutional question there as to whether this practice, broadly speaking, is legal. Is this is it consistent with the president's ability to, quote, take care that the laws be faithfully executed, the take care clause of Article 2? Congress, we know, has the power of the purse under Article 1, Section 8. So it's a genuinely interesting separation of powers constitutional question that's been disputed for a very long time. The court has actually never definitively weighed in one way or the other. Back in the early 1970s, Richard Nixon was seen by some as abusing this power. Congress, in response, passed the Impoundment Control Act of 1974, which broadly limits the president's ability to do this. And that's essentially been the law for the past half century. But again, SCOTUS has never actually ruled one way or the other there. But you're totally right. Russ Vought, in that early OMB memo, was essentially asserting this Jeffersonian notion of presidential impoundment there. Frankly, this whole dispute currently happening in Amir Ali's courtroom in Washington, D.C. when it comes to the $2 billion in USAID funding. That was the case last week where Amy Coney Barrett and John Roberts went wildly on the temporary restraining order. This all has to do with the issue of impoundment there. So, I mean, the post that I put up on social media basically said, look, I mean, I'm a constitutional law guy. This, like birthright citizenship for children of illegal aliens, these are open questions. I mean, SCOTUS has actually never ruled one way or the other on these questions there. Is the court perfect right now? No, it's very far from perfect. Frankly, I wish that we had 9 Clarence Thomases and Sam Alitos. We don't. We have some squishy center-right jurists like John Roberts, Amy Coney Barrett, and Brett Kavanaugh's squishier than most, frankly. But, it's still, broadly speaking, Matt, realistically, probably about as good a court as we're going to get, at least for now, pending positive elements that I don't necessarily see happening there. So I say let's shoot our shot. Let's take this chance now. If you're the Trump DOJ, let's try to tee up directly these constitutional questions that we have not gotten a definitive answer on, whether it's birthright citizenship, whether it's impoundment of presidential funds, whether it's the all-important question that we've discussed before of nationwide injunctions. That's probably the number one most important thing there. But there's no shortage of critical constitutional questions that if I were working in the Trump DOJ Solicitor General's office right now, I would be working on those cert petitions. Burn the midnight oil, guys. Get these cert petitions filed.
Excellent. Well, yeah, we'll be talking about this a lot more, and we'll see how it pans out. I mean, it's definitely it's going to be in the courts in many ways, I think, for a while, because the administration is very committed to using it. So, coming soon to a theater near you. But before we leave you, Josh, we have to talk about the Jews. We got to talk about the Jews. As opposed to perhaps many of the sorts of things you hear, sadly, these days online and these debates and discourse such that it is, you have a book coming out March 18th called Israel and Civilization, The Fate of the Jewish Nation and the Destiny of the West. So what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the book comes out this Tuesday. It's my first book, so I'm very excited about this. So the book, Matt, it sounds like a very Jewy book, and it is to an extent, but it's so much broader than that, actually. So we deliberately chose the cover of this book, Moses parting the Red Sea, not some kind of blue and white iconography or something like that there, because the book is fundamentally calling for a biblical restoration. That actually really is the book, Matt. I basically argue that all that what we call Western civilization today actually begins with God's revelation to Moses and the Israelites at Mount Sinai. I kind of trace the history of the English common law, the American founding there, how so much of this was predicated upon biblical ideals. And the book ultimately calls not just for close U.S.-Israel relations, which is in there, but really more broadly speaking, calling for an ecumenical, Jewish, Christian, biblical, nationalist alliance, which alone is capable of withstanding and turning back the tide against the three hegemonic forces that seek to subjugate us, which are wokeism, Islamism, and global neoliberalism. So there's a lot packed in there, but I would like to think that the book kind of walks through all these thematically there. So again, Israel and Civilization, the Fate of the Jewish Nation, and the Destiny of the West. You can pre-order it now. It's out this Tuesday.
Yes, March 18th. And where is your preferred method that people buy this book?
Amazon and Barnes & Noble are probably the two most popular online vendors, but whatever works for you, it's available online in a bunch of places.